All right, so are you ready to dive into some controversy today?
Always up for a good debate.
Okay, good. Because today we're taking on a book that's well, it's caused quite a stir.
Oh, yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Lots of strong opinions on that one.
You know, the one with the lobsters? Yeah, from what I've read, Peterson, this clinical psychologist and professor guy, he tackles these huge life questions.
Right, meaning responsibility.
Yeah, all that, even good and evil.
It's like a philosophy burrito,
Yeah.
wrapped up in this self-help social commentary kind of way.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot to unpack.
It really is, and it's interesting, to see how this book has kind of blown up, become this cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, especially with younger guys, right?
Yeah, it seems like it really hits a nerve with them. The Goodreads reviews are all over the place. Some people are like, this book changed my life, and others are like, this is complete garbage.
Yeah, I saw that. So Peterson, he draws a lot from, what was it, Jungian psychology?
Yeah, exactly, Jungian psychology. And ancient myths, too. It's all very, deep and symbolic.
Okay, so for those of us who, haven't been spending all our free time studying psych theories, what's the deal with Jungian psychology?
Well, it gets into these things called archetypes. They're like these universal patterns of thought and behavior that you see popping up in myths and stories all over the world.
Okay, so the hero?
Exactly, like the hero, the villain, the wise old man, all those classic figures.
So it's those figures, those archetypes are kind of hardwired into us?
That's the idea, yeah. Jung said they exist in our collective unconscious, and they kind of shape how we see ourselves and the world around us.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. And Peterson uses these archetypes to kind of make his points about human nature and all that.
Exactly. It's like he's saying these old stories have something to teach us about how to live today.
That's pretty cool, actually. But okay, let's get to the heart of the matter. What are these 12 rules that everyone's talking about? I'm picturing thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's Wi-Fi, but way more intellectual.
You're not far off. They are pretty simple and straightforward on the surface. Stand up straight with your shoulders back.
My grandma used to tell me that all the time.
Right. Or treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping.
Okay, yeah, I could see how those would be good rules to live by. But you're saying there's more to it than that.
Oh, yeah. Each rule is like a jumping off point for this deeper dive into personal responsibility, meaning all sorts of big ideas.
Okay, so let's take stand up straight. I mean, that seems pretty basic. But Peterson connects it to something about serotonin and lobsters.
He does. He's saying good posture isn't just about looking good. It's linked to confidence, even dominance.
Dominance.
Yeah, and this is where the lobster thing comes in. Peterson points out that lobsters that are higher up in the pecking order, they have more serotonin.
Wait, so lobsters have serotonin too?
They do. It's a neurotransmitter that's linked to, well, feeling good and having a good social standing.
Okay, so he's saying that by standing up straight, we can trick our brains into feeling more confident.
It's not quite tricking your brain, but yeah, the idea is that good posture can actually have a positive impact on your brain chemistry.
Oh, interesting. But wait, lobsters, serotonin, dominance. How does all that connect back to humans? Are we really that similar to lobsters?
Well, Peterson's argument is that hierarchies are built into nature. It's not just a human thing.
So he's using the lobster as an example of this natural order.
Exactly. He's saying, look, even lobsters have this drive to be at the top. And humans, we're part of nature too, right?
Yeah.
So he's suggesting that we have this same drive for dominance hardwired into us, and serotonin plays a big part in that.
I can already hear anthropologists and sociologists cringing at that. I mean, humans are a bit more complicated than lobsters, right?
Yeah. You've got a point there. We have culture, social structures. It's not all about biology.
And speaking of things that might make people cringe, a lot of the reviews mentioned Peterson's reliance on biblical interpretations. Some people seem to really dig it, but others not so much. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's definitely a point of contention. Some people see it as insightful. Others see it as, well, a bit of a stretch.
So he sees these ancient myths, especially from the Bible, as these hidden guides to life.
Exactly. He thinks they contain this timeless wisdom about human nature and the challenges we all face.
Okay, so when he talks about pursuing what's meaningful, not just what's easy, is he drawing on, say, the story of Job or something?
Yeah, exactly. He might use a story like that to illustrate the importance of sticking to your values even when things get tough. But, his critics argue that he often picks and chooses which parts of these stories to focus on.
And that he ignores the historical and cultural context.
Yeah, that's a common criticism.
It seems like he's a pretty polarizing figure. People either love him or hate him.
That's a good way to put it. He's definitely not afraid to ruffle some feathers.
Okay, so we've got this clinical psychologist drawing on ancient myths, lobsters, and some pretty bold claims about human nature. And it's all wrapped up in this self-help, philosophy, social commentary package. Where we go from here? What else do we need to dig into?
Oh, we've still got like 11 more of these rules to go through.
Right, like a whole list of life advice. What's next?
Well, treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping. That's a big one.
Yeah, I struggle with that. Being nice to myself,
Yeah, it's hard, right?
it's way easier to be kind to other people than to myself. I'm always like criticizing myself and focusing on my flaws. It's like having this inner critic who never shuts up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that. But Peterson's saying, we need to turn some of that care and compassion inward.
So treat ourselves with the same kindness and respect that we'd offer to like a close friend or family member.
Exactly. He's saying, we often neglect our own needs while we're busy taking care of everyone else. But you can't pour from an empty cup, right? You have to take care of yourself too.
That makes sense. And I guess it ties into the next rule. Make friends with people who want the best for you.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's all about creating a positive, supportive environment for yourself.
Yeah. Who wants to be surrounded by like negativity and drama all the time? We all need those people who lift us up and, challenge us to grow.
Exactly. Peterson's saying that people we hang out with have a huge impact on our lives. They can either bring us down or help us reach our potential.
It's like you're choosing your own personal growth team.
Yeah, I like that. You need your cheerleaders, your mentors, your accountability buddies, people who inspire you to be better.
Okay, rule number 4, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. That one hits home, especially in the age of social media. It's so easy to get caught up in comparing yourself to other people.
It's the worst, right?
It is. It's like a recipe for envy and insecurity. But Peterson's saying the only comparison that matters is with yourself.
Exactly. He's saying, don't waste your energy on those external comparisons. They'll just make you miserable.
Yeah.
Focus on your own progress, your own journey.
Celebrate your wins. Learn from your mistakes. Yeah, that's a much healthier approach.
Way healthier. Okay, this next one's a bit tricky. Rule number 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Oh yeah, parenting advice. That's a whole other can of worms.
Right. I'm not a parent, but I can see how that one could be controversial.
Yeah, it sounds like he's advocating for like strict discipline, lots of timeouts.
Well, he's definitely emphasizing boundaries and accountability.
Making sure your kids understand that their actions has consequences.
Right. And, he's not saying be like a tyrannical parent. It's more about guidance, helping your kids develop self-control and become responsible people. But yeah, it's a tough one for sure.
Okay, on to rule number 6. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. I like that one.
It's a good one, right? Yeah. It's about self-reflection, taking responsibility for your own life before you go trying to change the world.
Exactly. Peterson's saying, we often project our own issues onto other people. We criticize society's problems when maybe we should be looking inward first.
Like, get your own act together before you try to fix everyone else.
Exactly. And that leads nicely into rule number 7. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient.
Okay, that one sounds pretty deep.
It is. It's about living a life of purpose, not just chasing short-term pleasure or easy wins.
So don't just go for the low-hanging fruit.
Right. Find what truly matters to you, what aligns with your values, and go after that, even if it's hard.
Okay, I like that. Makes sense. Rule number 8, tell the truth, or at least don't lie. That seems pretty obvious.
Yeah, it does, right? Don't be a liar. But I think Peterson's getting at something deeper here.
Okay, like what?
Well, he sees honesty as being fundamental to a meaningful life. Like, it's not just about avoiding getting caught in a lie. It's about building trust, having integrity, being true to yourself.
Yeah, because living a lie, that can catch up to you.
It can. Okay, number 9. Assume that the person you were listening to might know something you don't.
Oh, I like that one. It's a good reminder to be humble, to be open to learning from other people.
Yeah. It's easy to think we have all the answers, but everyone has something to teach us if we're willing to listen.
And maybe especially the people we disagree with.
Exactly. Those are often the people we can learn the most from.
Okay, rule number 10, be precise in your speech.
That one might sound a bit, technical, but Peterson sees it as being super important for clear thinking and communication.
So Choose your words carefully, define your terms, all that.
Exactly. He's saying, vague language leads to vague thinking. If you want to understand something, if you want to get your point across, you need to be precise.
Okay, I can see that. All right, this next one threw me for a loop. Rule number 11, do not bother children when they are skateboarding. What?
I know, right? It seems so random.
Like out of left field.
But there's a metaphor here, of course. Peterson's using skateboarding to represent risk-taking, facing challenges.
So it's about letting kids, skin their knees once in a while.
Yeah, letting them explore, experiment, even fail. He's saying, if you're always hovering over your kids, trying to protect them from every little bump and bruise, you're actually doing them a disservice.
Yeah, they need to learn how to navigate the world on their own.
Exactly. And finally, rule number 12, pet a cat when you encounter one on the street.
Okay, that one's definitely the most unexpected, but I kind of love it.
Yeah, it's sweet, right?
It's like a reminder to appreciate the little things in life, to find those moments of joy and connection, even amidst all the chaos.
That's exactly it. And, woven throughout all these rules are these bigger themes that keep coming up.
Right, like personal responsibility. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah, Peterson's a big believer in taking ownership of your life, making good choices, contributing to society.
And finding meaning.
Yes. He's saying humans are hardwired to search for meaning. We need something to strive for, something bigger than ourselves.
And he doesn't shy away from the tough stuff either, like suffering and the darker side of human nature.
No, he doesn't. He's saying, life is hard. Bad things happen.
Yeah.
But we can learn and grow from those experiences. Facing our fears, confronting our limitations, that's all part of the journey.
Okay, so we've got personal responsibility, meaning-making, facing suffering. Those are some pretty heavy themes. But like we said earlier, Peterson's work has also attracted a lot of criticism.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What are some of the main concerns that people have raised about his ideas?
Well, we already touched on the biblical interpretations, which not everyone's on board with. But another big one is his views on gender roles.
Oh, yeah. I remember that came up a lot in the reviews. Some people found his views, outdated.
Yeah, to say the least. His take is that men and women are inherently different biologically and psychologically, and that those differences play out in, traditional gender roles. So he's saying men are naturally more competitive and assertive, and women are more nurturing and agreeable.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. But his critics are saying, hold on, that's a pretty narrow view of gender.
And that it ignores the vast diversity of human experience.
Exactly. Plus, there's that whole nature versus nurture thing. How much of our behavior is determined by our biology and how much is shaped by our upbringing and culture?
It's a complicated question. And Peterson seems to put a lot of emphasis on biology, maybe too much emphasis, according to his critics.
Right. They're worried that framing gender differences as primarily biological will just reinforce harmful stereotypes, like the idea that women aren't cut out for leadership roles or that men can't be nurturing caregivers.
So it's not that people are saying there are no biological differences between men and women. It's more about how those differences are interpreted and the potential social implications.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the complex interplay of biology, culture, and individual choice.
Okay, makes sense. What about the lobster analogy? That one also seemed to rub a lot of people the wrong way.
Yeah, Peterson uses the lobster to illustrate his point about natural hierarchies. But his critics were pointing out that it's a pretty flawed analogy.
In what way?
Well, for one thing, lobster hierarchies are way more complex than he makes them out to be. It's not just about aggression and serotonin. There are all sorts of factors involved, like size, age, access to food.
So it's not as simple as alpha lobster wins every time.
Not at all. And even if lobster hierarchies were all about serotonin, it's a big jump to apply that logic to humans. We're not lobsters.
We have language, culture, morality, a whole different level of complexity.
Exactly. And, reducing human behavior to lobster biology, that's just not very convincing. It's an oversimplification.
And this tendency to oversimplify things, to cherry-pick evidence, that seems to be a common thread in the criticisms of Peterson's work.
Yeah, you definitely have to take his claims with a grain of salt and do your own research.
So it sounds like Peterson's work is, a bit of a mixed bag. There are some thought-provoking ideas, but also some things to be cautious about. Okay, so we left off talking about some of the criticisms of Peterson's work, especially his views on gender roles. Can you elaborate on what he actually says about men and women that rubs people the wrong way?
So Peterson's argument is that, men and women, we've evolved differently, right?
Okay, biologically, sure, but you're saying he goes beyond just the physical differences?
Yeah, he's saying that, like, men and women, we've developed different psychological traits.
Because of evolution?
Yeah, because of evolution and because of cultural norms, too.
Okay.
Like he says men are naturally more competitive.
More assertive?
Yeah, and women are more nurturing, more agreeable.
And that's where people start to take issue, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people see that as, like, really stereotypical.
And outdated.
Yeah, totally. They say it ignores the fact that people express their gender in all sorts of different ways.
And that it's not so black and white.
Right, like there are plenty of women who are super competitive and assertive.
And men who are nurturing and sensitive.
Exactly. So it's like he's pushing this very, like, essentialist view of gender.
Like it's all predetermined by biology.
Yeah, and that it just doesn't leave much room for individual variation or for the role of culture and upbringing.
Really, that whole nature versus nurture debate.
Exactly.
Mm.
And his critics are worried that if you start saying that these gender differences are, like, hardwired into us, that it's going to be used to justify all sorts of inequality.
Like saying women aren't as fit for leadership roles or something.
Yeah, or that men shouldn't be expected to be stay-at-home dads.
So it's not so much that people are denying that there are any biological differences between men and women.
It's more that they're uncomfortable with the way those differences are often interpreted.
And the potential consequences for how we treat each other and structure society.
Right. It's about recognizing the complexity of gender and not reducing people to these simplistic categories.
Okay, that makes sense. And I guess it ties into a broader concern about Peterson's tendency to kind of oversimplify complex issues, which is something we've touched on a few times now.
Yeah, definitely. And the lobster analogy is a good example of that.
Right? He uses that to argue that hierarchies are like a natural part of life.
Yeah, that they're, like, built into our biology.
But like you said earlier, lobsters and humans were not exactly the same.
Not even close. And, it turns out that even lobster hierarchies are more complicated than he makes them seem.
Really?
Yeah, it's not just about aggression and serotonin. Like, the size of the lobster matters.
I guess that makes sense.
And their age, their access to food, all sorts of things.
So it's not this simple equation where the lobster with the most serotonin always wins.
Nope. And even if it were, that doesn't mean it automatically applies to humans.
We have things like empathy and cooperation.
Right. We have moral codes, complex social structures. It's just a different ballgame.
So using the lobster as a model for human behavior is, well, a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, it's an oversimplification.
Yeah.
And that tendency to oversimplify, to cherry pick evidence that supports his claims, that's something that his critics point to a lot.
So it's important to approach his work with a critical eye.
Definitely. Don't just take everything he says at face value. Do your own research, think critically, and form your own conclusions.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on. We've covered a lot of ground today, and it's clear that 12 Rules for Life is a book that sparks a lot of debate.
Yeah, it's definitely thought-provoking.
There are some valuable insights in there,
For sure.
but also some things to be cautious about.
Absolutely. But ultimately, I think Peterson's work, whether you agree with him or not, it gets people thinking.
About themselves, about the world.
Yeah, it pushes us to grapple with those big questions about meaning, responsibility, how to live a good life.
And those are questions that are always worth asking.
Definitely. So, to our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep searching for what matters most to you.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into 12 Rules for Life. We'll catch you next time.